I am just absolutely thrilled to be here. I can't think of a better feeling than waking up on a cold wintry morning and coming into the warmth of a room of this nature filled with some of the most amazing babes in the city. So thank you all for coming. I'm also incredibly buoyed by the cross-generational aspect of it all. Wow, it's great. I know a whole generation grew up watching that show, fashion television, or even before that, because of course I started back in 1979. But what's so interesting to me now that I can start to see it, I don't know if it comes with age. It certainly comes with with a heck of a lot of experience under your belt. Finally, there are times I feel when I can actually step back a bit and see the forest for the trees. I couldn't for a long time. I was just so caught up in the thick of it, in the hype of it. And believe me, I still am. I haven't started to dance any less, or I'm certainly not slowing down in any way, shape, or form. But I seem to have this breadth of experience now that really I understand contributed to who I am today. And it's because of the particular point that I'm at in my life and the particular a vantage point that I have, that I can see just how things got to be this way. And the biggest buzzword right now seems to be branding. Everybody wants to stand for something, or to at least appear that they stand for something. And that was something that I was never conscious of, ever conscious of. It wasn't, when I thought of brands, when I was growing up, a brand was Kellogg's or something, or, Ivory soap, or, it really was nothing. I never thought of a person as a brand. I mean, celebrity brands were still something that were pretty remote as well. But I guess it was just an incredible amount of passion and gusto and a real joy for what I did that made me throw myself into this arena in such an unbridled way, worked my butt off, exposed myself in myriad ways, by writing columns for newspapers and magazines and speaking to women's groups and just being on TV and being, myself in the most honest way I could be. I think that after a while there's this cumulative effect, and voila, here I am. And here's Anne-Marie! Oh my God, I won't ask you how the traffic was.
Goodness gracious. I'd like to joke that I was fashionably late, but I don't think it's very fashionable. So, okay, let's get started. Personal branding. If anybody has given us the right to talk about personal branding, is you. You've had a career for more than 3 decades, but not just a job. You've been prominent for 3 decades. Before personal branding was even a term, and it was just reputation and hard work. Tell us how you got there.
Well. You'll have to read the book for that. I mean, as I was telling my new best friend.
See, personal branding. Push the book.
How I got there was just luckily being so nuts about what I did and being a glutton for work, and being adamant about being who I was, being adamant about being true to myself, and being adamant about sharing my stories. I think that's a really important thing, because I think a lot of this, the brand luster in terms of what I hopefully stand for is a kind of honesty and authenticity. And that was something I think that I can start by talking about my parents and how I was raised.
Yeah, one of the words that comes to mind when I think of you, Jeannie, is fearless. Because before, and not to make you feel like this is chiseled in stone, but before there was cable, and before there were specialty channels like HDTV, and before there was digital photos and the internet and Twitter and Facebook, there was, dun, 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 and everybody ran to the television to watch fashion television. I mean, you did something, even in the camera angles. I want you to think about the intro to fashion television for a second. It was you running after someone with a camera behind you. Nobody put footage like that on TV.
But that even started way before that, because that started back in the late 70s when we did the groundbreaking The New Music, which was pre-MTV. Another thing that we Canadians can be proud of, we were putting rock stars on television in very candid ways, like way before MTV even got started. And that whole style of shooting, and that, you know, and thank you, oh, great one, Moses Znaimer, and the amazing late, great John Martin, who was the producer that, you know, pitched the show to City TV in the first place, to do a rock and roll show that was, you know, just swish pans and smash and grab and knocking on the rock star's hotel room door, and the camera would be rolling even before the rock star opened the door. And, you know, and then, you know, there was that incredible journey for me, those rides on smoky tour buses and the grittiness backstage, and just really discovering these fabulous, iconic characters within that rock arena. That really fed my fantasies and my fires, and we just really took that whole sensibility, that whole style of shooting, that whole approach, and translated it for the fashion arena. That's really all we did. So I was still that rock and roll reporter, but instead of interviewing, you know, I don't know, Keith Richards, I was interviewing Karl Lagerfeld. It was really all the same. Fashion is entertainment. But, you know, you talk about a fearlessness, and I think tantamount, you know, to all this, really that's what got me through everything and all my life's trials and everything from, you know, like, oh boy, you know, actually going for what I had envisioned in the first place, having the chutzpah, the nerve to go for it. You know, fearlessness got me through, you know, my marriage breakup, you know, the recovery of my marriage breakup, which was a total devastating episode for me. It gets me through the nights now. I've got my daughter who lives in a log cabin by herself in the Yukon, in the middle of the woods. Fearlessness, I mean, you know, if I instilled it in her, geez, I wish she hadn't really, you know, taken me up on it. But for me, it's all about, you have to be my parents are Holocaust survivors. They're selling a copy of my parents' memoirs, actually, out in the lobby, which I'm very proud of, just published. My parents are Holocaust survivors, and my dad drummed into my sister and I from a very, very young age, don't be afraid and never give up. So as long as you're fearless and as long as you're tenacious, you can do anything. I honestly believe that no matter what you're doing, no matter if you're trying to build your brand, if you're trying to build your business, if you're trying to, you know, get through the night, you know, if you're trying to live a life of courage, and like the great French novelist Anais Nin once said, this is one of my favorite quotes, life shrinks or expands according to one's courage. And I think if you want to live a big, fabulous life, just be fearless. So it's you know, it's the answer to everything, I think, that fearlessness.
And in those moments where maybe things weren't going so well, is that the voice that you heard? Is it that voice of your dad or your mom?
Yeah. Oh, I mean, you know, I remember how many times was I, you know, in the middle of a fashion, you know, bedlam, crazy-making scenario, and I knew I had to get that 20-second soundbite from Karl Lagerfeld, and I would like be running after him with a microphone, and in the back of my head, I'd hear my dad say, don't be afraid, never give up, don't be afraid. You know, whatever it was, that was just, you just go. And I feel it every day of my life, and every new that I'm about to embark on, you know, like sort of yet another chapter, which can't be announced for another 10 days, I think, but I'm doing a project I'm very excited about that seems to me very modern and very right for me. And of course I'm afraid, as we all are afraid of the unknown and where it's going to take us.
Do you still get afraid after all of your successes?
Yeah, but not afraid, the potential for being afraid is there, so it's me suppressing it. I mean, I think I'd be pretty inhuman if I just said, well, I'm never afraid. I mean, you do, but you feel it, you know it's there, and you just like get rid of it, talk yourself out of it, snap out of it, because it's not going to get you anywhere. It is not going to get you out of bed in the morning. It's not going to make you put one foot in front of the other. It's going to be absolutely crippling, paralyzing. So you really better get rid of it right now. Don't even think about it. You know, for me, the authenticity, though, and the you know, I think started, you know, to take you to that point where, you know, my brand kind of started to really grow, where I started to be maybe a little conscious of it, was working for Moses Znaimer when he dragged me into his office one day, and I was in the throes of doing, you know, fashion television, which was really successful, and I'd come off, you know, all that 6-year history of doing rock and roll on TV, and I thought my life was, you know, pretty fabulous. There I was
We all thought your life was pretty fast.
It was probably, you know, a couple of years, maybe even after, or maybe shortly after I had my first kid, or maybe right around the time I was starting to have children, and dragged me into my office to press my buttons in that Machiavellian way that he often did. God, he knew how to press buttons really well. He'd, you know, say, I want to ask you something. What do you stand for? I said, well, what do you mean, what do I stand for? He goes, I want to know what you stand for, because, you know, and he started listing off colleagues like Denise Donlin, who was, you know, doing much music at the time, Tim Blanks, who was hosting that other CBC Fashion File show, like, and all these people that had a certain kind of gravitas, you know, well, they stand for this, and they stand for that, and they stand for, you know, like, what do you really stand for? And I started thinking, geez, like, well, I stand for being honest and working really hard and being passionate about what I do. And, you know, wasn't that good enough for Moses? Obviously, you know, it wasn't. Because I just slunk out of his office, like, feeling like, oh, what do I stand for? Like, who am I? What is? And I guess what he was saying is, well, what is your point of view? How do you feel you're coming at your work that is unique in a way, that is very, very personal to you stylistically? And I went away and I thought about it for a really long time, and I thought, I guess what I could stand for is being a real person in a very unreal world. And that sort of became my new mantra or mode of operating. Like, I could be the one that could hold viewers' hands every week and take them through that crazy maze and be as grounded as I could possibly be, wearing 6-inch heels, you know, and really be the one that could be there for them. I could be the translator, the demystifier, the reality check. And it was an enigmatic thing to stand for at a time in fashion when it was all about fantasy and frivolity and being over the top, darling. But it really, it was a wonderful, cozy place for me to be, because I knew I could always be good at it, because I didn't have to try to be anything other than myself.
There's courses on that now. It's called strengths training, about how to identify your strengths. But talk to us about how, without a course, you identified what your strengths were, what your voice was, what your point of view was. Did you sit down? Did you go through your work? Did you check in with other people? Because there's people who are trying to formulate their brands, and they may be good at 50 things, but really you want to sort of have one thing that you're good at.
But I think it's just really, you know, a matter of getting to know yourself, you know, being in touch with yourself. I mean, like, what's the answer, you know, or the secret or the key to having, you know, great style? People, you know, ask that all the time. And isn't it a matter of looking in the mirror and being really honest about who you are, and not only who you are physically, but what you really want to project, you know? And I think it's just that being in touch with yourself, and that, I guess it's never really that conscious. I mean, I never went about to, well, I better really get to know myself if I'm going to put myself out there. I had started my career as an actress. I started acting professionally when I was 16 years old, and really quite loved it, and went to study acting in New York and mime in Paris, so I could do this little white face.
Can you still do it? Can you
wonder.
Still do it?
Oh, yeah,
memory?
it's like riding a bike. You never, yeah, if something goes down with the sound system, I may revert to that. But now I never shut up. The ultimate irony, right? Former mime, I'm making up for lost time. But it was all, you know, for me, it was always about communication. It was always about storytelling. I knew my parents, and bless them both, and God, they're just the most incredible spiritual mentors I could imagine. My dad has been gone now for about 27 years, and my mom, thank God, is still ticking. She's 94, bless her. But they really taught me that, about this whole lesson about communication. Because they were Holocaust survivors and they had the most extraordinary tales of hardship and survival, they really made it their business to tell their kids every step of the way of their journey. They wanted us to understand where they came from, how they survived, the oppression that they had really pushed through, and the fact that they did manage to gather themselves really out of the ashes, literally, and rise again like phoenixes. and that was something that was so important growing up, hearing these stories about the war. And like I was 5 years old, I was hiding under the bed because I didn't want to hear any more war stories. It was enough already, but that was their therapy, I guess. I mean, my parents, well, the war was over in 45. They immigrated here in 1948. I was born like 4 years later. They were still raw from all these horrendous things. They lost their entire families. And so they didn't, in those days you didn't go to a shrink. Really, I shouldn't say you didn't. A lot of people did. But most people, there was a bit of a stigma to it, or they didn't want to go for professional help. You wanted to talk to someone, you talk to your kid. You talk to people. And so they talked to my sister and I to such a degree that these stories became the fabric, of who we are. And it made me feel then as I grew older and I had my own personal tragedies go down, nothing, could ever compare with what my parents had gone through. But for me, it was very important to share my stories then. Mm-hmm. So I had this column in Flair magazine that Bonnie Brooks happily gave me a page in the magazine every month to just let it rip, tell people about my so-called fabulous life, whatever it was, whether I wanted to talk about a designer I had just met, or whether I wanted to talk about, getting a new puppy, or my complaints about my boyfriend, or how horrible it was that my marriage had broken up. And for over 10 years, I had this wonderful platform, a column called Behind the Scenes in Flair magazine that I could write whatever I wanted to write about. And that was a great dialogue that I could have with women, across the country, and a lot of these women who were growing up watching me. So it's that honesty, that authenticity, that I want to share it. It's the only thing we have to give one another, and it doesn't cost anything. Our own personal stories. It's a wonderful thing. I know some people are like, ooh, I want to be private. That's great, but, well, then I don't know how to tell you to be a brand. You can be a brand, you can be something else. I don't know what, but if you want to be a personal brand, if you want your name to stand for something and resonate for something, you've got to be as open and transparent and honest as possible, I think. I don't know. I mean, maybe that's just the way it was for me, and that's certainly the way it is, and hopefully will continue to be.
You said Moses helped you. It will continue to be, because you said 10 days or something new happening. I love that. I love that.
Oh, yeah. Oh, no, but it continues to be with every, I'm involved in so many other things. It's like, oh, yes, and now yet another layer.
Let's talk about other layers, because you said, so Moses helps you identify the fact that you are authentic. You are an everyday woman going into this crazy fashion world, and you're going to bring all of us along with you. So that was then, fast forward, so you went through magazines, television, radio. You are now successful in new digital media. And just like, video killed the radio star, some people think that digital is going to kill the TV star, but there you are, successful in this new media. Did you take that same brand, or did you have to change it at all?
No, all of it's just a reflection of who I am, and that's, as a communicator, as a storyteller, the more ways of getting your story out there, the better. And aren't we blessed? I mean, when it used to be only you'd have to have a magazine column, or you'd have to have a newspaper editor giving you the space in the paper, or you'd have to have a producer of a TV show saying, okay, you can go and do that show. Kids are spilling their guts in their bedrooms and just recording it and starting their own YouTube channels. Mm-hmm. You don't need permission, or you don't need someone's blessing. You don't need someone to give you a platform anymore. It's all there for the taking. It's all there. And that's why I really don't understand anyone, because I do still meet a lot of women who are out there, and men, who are out there kind of, doing their thing, and then it's like, oh yeah, but I don't tweet, well, okay, if you want to limit yourself in that way, that's okay. It's not, maybe it's obviously not for everyone, but I don't understand why not. It doesn't cost anything. What a great way to get messages out there.
Let's go back to the fear word then, because a lot of people are afraid of a new digital media. You were in your 50s, I think that's okay to say that, when digital media was just starting, and you took your platform and you plunked it right in the middle of digital media. You said, let's go.
Well, I don't know, how old was I? 1994. Yeah, I was...
I only know that because I went on Twitter, and you tweeted recently that you were going to be, can I say this? Well, it's on Twitter. 63 next month.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely say it. Yeah, that's another thing. Like, why do people lie about their age? I don't get that at all. I do not get that at all. It's like, you know, you're at a party and you're having a great time, and someone comes up to you, when did you get here? Oh, I just arrived 5 minutes ago. But really, you've been at the party for 2 hours. Why would you be ashamed to say that? Like, so...
Very good.
It's the most basic thing about us. It's all about our frame of reference, and especially in this day and age. And I'm telling you, I'm coming from a place where, I've seen a lot of ageism. We've all seen it, you know, as we've seen a whole lot of other wretched stuff in the world, you know, and discrimination of all sorts. And that's fine. It's going to exist because maybe it's just part of the, you know, the human condition that hopefully a lot of us are working on changing. But I dare say that there is an incredible amount of reverence, too, that is paid to people of a certain age and as we get older, because the older you get, you're going to have a better frame of reference. You're going to have so much more to draw on, so many more experiences. Why would you possibly even think that, oh, I'm going to run out of steam because I'm getting old? Why? Because, you know, you've got a few more, you know, tracks on your faces, you know, like, who cares? You know, I really think it's a matter of being vibrant and remaining relevant and staying in touch and not saying, well, that's not for me. You've got to embrace change and embrace the new technology. I mean, 1994, so I was 42 years old, actually, when I first stepped into the digital world. I'd never even heard of the internet before. But there was a big company called MCI, out of, you know, big communications giant in the States, that came to me to be a cyber host of a new digital fashion magazine that they were putting up there called At Fashion. It was there weren't enough women using the internet in those days. It was only like the mid-90s. And they said, we need more women on the internet, but what can we do? We're going to do a site, you know, that has to do with fashion. And I went, a site? What does a site mean? I didn't even know any. Guys came over to my house with you know, with all the gear, and they set me up, and they put me, and I remember being up all night that first night surfing the web. And it was like, ooh, I mean, the weird stuff that you found up there at the time. It was nothing. But we set up the first fashion site ever on the World Wide Web. It was called At Fashion, and I got to pioneer that, and it was just totally, wildly, incredibly exciting. And to want to, you know, and okay, I was in my 40s then, but, you know, and Twitter I started on, I don't know, maybe how many years am I tweeting now, like 6 years ago. I didn't know much about it. I heard rumblings about it. I looked into it, and now, wow, you know, I got on board, and I've got like 63,000 followers or something, which is really nothing in the great scheme of things for Canada. I guess it's pretty good.
That's a lot.
Yeah,
anybody else here have 63,000 followers on Twitter?
It's a beast, you know, that you have to feed. You have to keep on top of it. But it's these things that keep you going. You should subscribe to things of this nature. You should get involved with things of this nature. You know, people say, well, I don't have time for it. But you make the time, because it starts to become part of your lifestyle, and it's just like, you know, like brushing your teeth. I got to send out a tweet today. You know, I've got to tell people where I'm at. I want to share something with people. I want to turn people on to things. I mean, that gives me my biggest joy.
If you don't follow Jeanne on Twitter, by the way, you should, because I do follow you on Twitter. She's very funny, she's very witty, and it gives you all kinds of glimpses, not just into her personal life, but also things that are important in the world of fashion and in the world of new media, and I enjoy your tweets very much.
Thank you.
That I would have that as an aside. Have you ever really quickly taken a brand risk that maybe hasn't worked?
What do you mean, like gotten involved with something and thought, oh, I shouldn't have done this?
Let's say you thought, well, you know, I'm Jeanne Beker. I'm gonna try a little bit. I can't think of one.
Well, I don't know. I'll say things that didn't maybe work for me because they didn't make me happy. I mean, that I think is the ultimate measure of success, whatever. I think, you know, when I did, and I mean, it looked fun and the optics were great and the show was, you know, greatly consumed and loved, you know, watched. Canada's Next Top Model. Mm-hmm. I didn't really like doing that. That was a very kind of, and I did it for 3 years. Although I sort of had to in a way because I was with the company that was producing it. I was there, a full-time employee there, and it seemed like I was an obvious choice to do something like that. I'd certainly seen most of the world's supermodels grow up in front of our fashion television lenses, and they asked me to be a judge on the show. And very shortly thereafter, I realized, you know, this is not really a reality show. It's a fantasy show. It's a game show. It's a mind game show. We're playing games with with the minds of these girls, and it didn't seem authentic to me. And I knew for the sake of entertainment, I had to be a little bitchy, and I had to be, you know, the tough one sometimes. I got sort of into it because it was kind of fun to be that outrageous. But, you know, when I went home at night, you know, I'd lie awake in bed and think, I really made that girl cry today. That's really not a nice thing to do. What am I putting out there? And it was all BS anyway. Not one of those girls from any incarnation of that show internationally has ever gone on to become a great model. I mean, like, if you have what it takes, you walk into a modeling agency and usually they see it and they capture it, and you don't have to spill your guts on national TV in order to make it as a model. But, you know, I played into, you know, an entertainment genre, and it didn't, you know, at the end of the day, it didn't really feel authentic to me. It was a sort of a dark phase for me to be even involved in something like that. So again, teaching me that just better be true to yourself. Don't do something that you're not really proud of. You know, really try to avoid that, because it'll just make you feel a little, you know, less good about yourself.
I go to a lot of events, I hear a lot of women speak, but I heard you speak once at a WXN event, and something you said stuck with me, and it made me laugh out loud because it was so honest. You said young women will come to you and say, oh, Jeanne Beker, I've watched you for years, I want to be just like you. And you said, I am just like me, go be yourself.
Yeah. I think what it was of people coming up to me saying, oh, I want your job. And I go get your own job. You know, my job did not exist before I, you know, kind of created it. And timing, of course, played a wonderful factor in it. But timing, I don't think timing is everything. It's a lot, but it's certainly not everything. Because, you know, unless you really scramble to really meet the opportunity head on, it'll just pass you by anyway. But yeah, I do, it is a matter of being original. Like, and people saying, you know, I want to be the next Jeanne Beker. A lot of young women have said that to me. It's like, oh my God, like, what a horrible thing. What a terrible thing. What a terrible thing to follow in anybody's footsteps. It's like, you know, people always say to me, are your daughters following in your footsteps? I should hope not. I mean, I don't want to, you know, I think we really owe it to ourselves to sort of breed this new generation of leaders, not followers. I mean, followers, okay, people, you can follow me on Twitter, but that's about the only followers, you know, that's the only way I think of followers, so that's fine. But you really, you really need to find a unique perspective on the world, because it's all about, you know, having your own point of view, and that's what I like to encourage, especially in young women, that they see that I've done something and they would like to be able to replicate it, but, you know, they really have to do it in their own way. It's wonderful to be an inspiration to people, but at the end of the day, I just like to inspire them to truly be their best selves possible.
All right, we're going to help people be the best selves possible. One of the best things about WXN events is that it gives us access to women like you, women who are known all across Canada. You're the new sort of pioneer woman. You know, when you think of a pioneer woman, you think of like the bonnet and the long apron. You are certainly not a bonnet and a long apron, but you're definitely a pioneer woman. And so we want to give people out there today, there's 2 microphones there, sort of by table 14 and by table 16. If you have a question for Ms. Beker, we would love to hear it. Please jump up, don't be shy. Really, in this whole 300 women here, you're all too shy to ask Jeanne Beker a question? Yay, thank you.
Okay, hello. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, so in regards to personal branding, Jeanne, what's your opinion on duo personal and professional branding? So veterinarian by day, fashion beauty blogger by night. So having your profession and then having your hobbies, but co-branding yourself.
You know, I think it's just, you've got to think of things holistically. Or, I mean, I shouldn't say you've got to. You do however you see it. I can only really talk about myself and my brand and what's worked for me. So for me, the personal and the professional were like one and the same. And, you know, maybe that's one of the secrets to my success as a professional brand, because I put so much my personal self in there. And the lines were always blurred between, you know, look at, I used my family as fodder for many, many, many columns for newspapers for years. I mean, there's a whole, you know, legions of people across the country who really did grow up with my family, like reading about my, you know, my daughter's trials and tribulations. I mean, I don't write about them that much anymore because I think they may not like it too much. But in the early days, it was like, you know, that's just what I did. That was who they didn't seem to mind it. They were like, oh, did you write about me this week? They sort of, I think they got off on it as they got older, and then I had to respect, you know, their privacy. Of course, I couldn't, you know, really cover them or talk about their lives the way I had. But certainly for me, that's what it's been all about. I think it's obviously tough. You know, I'm in a kind of lifestyle category, so it all works. People are interested in hearing about my, you know, downtime at my farmhouse on the weekends, and people are interested in seeing me, you know, at the couture shows in Paris, and people are wanting to know more about, you know, how I live in my city home, and all the different jobs that I have. I don't even think of as jobs because I love doing everything so much that it's just all part of my life. This is my life, and that's why I truly do, I guess, have a lifestyle brand. It's me, and I put it out there. I imagine it might be hard if you're working like for a very, you know, conservative corporation. I mean, like if you're a banker or something, but then you have a, you know, this whole fabulous passion for something like fashion, and you want to do a little fashion blog, and you know, yeah, that becomes hard. I don't know what the answer is. I really don't know what you do. And if you have to create a different persona for yourself, perhaps, you know, maybe you have to create a different brand that has, if you think one thing is going to hurt the other, obviously, that can be a very, you know, testy thing. Happily for me, everything, the more the better, and it all really jives together.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Yes, any more questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
You've had a lot of amazing experiences, like far too many to even, but is there one that stands out or a couple that really you felt were out of the box? I mean, if that's possible in your world?
Oh boy, yeah, there have been so many crazy experiences, but I gotta say, you know, most recently, like just back in November, receiving the Order of Canada. It's pretty fabulous. You know, whoever would have thought that something like fashion, which is like, and I have spent my life, it seems, defending fashion for its, you know, oh, it's so mindless, it's so frivolous, it's like, oh, yeah, we're not going to take you seriously, you're involved in fashion, you know, and yes, it's certainly an arena that is not going to ever, you know, find the cure for cancer or really, you know, help people on that vital level, but in other important ways, I think it has offered people an incredible platform for communication. It's a very important part of our culture and our national identity. I mean, I guess I got the Order of Canada primarily for my support of Canadian design talent, which is something that I still love to shout loudly about, and it's just a shame that we, you know, we don't have the means here to really promote ourselves the way we need to be promoted in order to really, survive on a global level. It's very scary what's happening now with Canadian brands in general. I mean, forget about just fashion. I mean, but that's a whole other thing. So that, for me to be sitting at my computer one day and getting a call from the Governor General's office that I'd been, you know, named to the Order of Canada, it was just like, my jaw just dropped, and I just thought, it was incredible. It was just an incredible feeling. And then to go to
Rideau Hall?
To go to Rideau Hall, but to be invited by Laureen Harper is a very dear friend of mine, and to be invited to stay at 24 Sussex, and my daughter came with me, who's not really a conservative, but she got to have breakfast with Stephen Harper, you know, in her pajamas, while I was, you know, in the foyer getting my hair blown dry, you know, and to watch my daughter just really, you know, at Rideau Hall, she was my date for the dinner, and watch her be such a charming, interesting, you know, vibrant person, and you know, just as the child of immigrants, you know, that just meant everything to me, to really feel that maybe I had made some small kind of difference in this incredible country that had afforded me so many incredible opportunities. Yeah, so that was a great experience.
With respect to everyone's schedules, we'll have time for one last question.
Oh, you know what? Can we do really short, only because this woman was standing waiting for a long time. We'll do them quickly. Jeannie can be quick, right?
Okay, yeah.
30 seconds. I'll give you the time clock.
Really quick. Hi. I'm Debbie, the Executive Director of Dress for Success.
Yeah, hi, Debbie.
Thank you. So we serve lots of women who are trying to better themselves. You've talked about never giving up, and definitely they're never giving up, but a lot of them are really fearful. Could you just say, top 2 tips that I can take back to the office to tell everyone to talk to our women about fearlessness and how to get there? Oh. That'll only take you 1 or 2 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, you know what? I don't know, because fearlessness is really only conquered by you know, believing in yourself, and it's very hard to if you don't have any support around you. I can only imagine. You know, sometimes I feel sorry for myself because I don't have a guy in my life to be my own, you know, personal cheerleader. So, and you know, and my girls are like flown the coop. I mean, one lives in the Yukon, one lives in Montreal. Like, I'm here. My mom, you know, bless her, is just not at a stage now where she's really even that communicative, and I can't, you know, it's like, I think sometimes, you know, where are my cheerleaders? Well, like my friends, my girlfriends, like, mean so much to me. My sister, my dog, you know, it's just that, you know, you've got to surround yourself. You've got to really engage yourself in community. You've got to reach out to people, because we're all ultimately looking for the same thing. I mean, I think that's the most poignant thing that I've learned over the years, that we're all, no matter what guise, you know, we're in, at the end of the day, we're all exactly the same deep down inside. I mean, we've maybe been shaped in different ways, but essentially the stuff that's there, it's called humanity, and we've just got to reach out to one another. And if you want to believe in yourself, you know, you've got to, you know, believe in others too, and create a community for yourself. I really don't know how to conquer that kind of fear otherwise, because it does require a lot of support. It's a lot of, you know, you can talk to yourself only so much, and, you know, you've got to believe in some kind of, you know, higher power, I think. But ultimately, you get a lot of strength from people around you, and you have to not be afraid to ask for it, that kind of help.
Thanks, Jeanne.
Thanks. So just very quickly, in your world travels with your career, was there ever a moment where another country's brand or community spoke to you that they either tried to lure you away, or that you ever gave a consideration to going to live in? Or is Canada just totally part of you?
And you're Irish, aren't you? And I love you, because I fantasize about that all the time. If there's one place on earth that I would love to live, Ireland, Dublin. I love the Irish people so much. One of my best friends, Louise Kennedy. I don't know if you know the Irish designer, Louise Kennedy. She's actually just came to visit me. Yeah, I fell in love with Ireland, you know, quite a long time ago, over 20 years ago, the first time I went there, and I go there very regularly, and I do love it. I'm very, very at home on the East Coast, because, again, people are just so salt of the earth. There's a realness to them. There's a groundedness to them, and just a lack of pretension. So I lived in Newfoundland for 3 years. That's how I first sort of got into the media. I, anyway, went there as a mime artist, ended up in radio. Go figure. Only in Newfoundland. So and you know, Newfoundland. That whole Newfoundland culture and the Irish culture, obviously really similar. I've invested in a beautiful resort in Peggy's Cove, Nova Scotia, called Ocean Stone. If you're ever out around that way, I spend a lot of time in Nova Scotia as well. And that whole East Coast, that really resonates with me big time. Vibe. Yeah, and it has nothing to do with fashion with a capital F, which I particularly love.
Jeanne, thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for being here this morning and for your questions.
Oh, thank you.
We are so thrilled to get to speak with you.